This public hearing is on the bond issue for the water project. Allow the borrowing of $3.1 million. So the floor is open for any members of the public wishing to speak for or against the bond issue this morning.
I'd like to give every one of the board members kind of a copy of something relative to a bond.
How much was it, Noel?
I think it's 3.1. 3.1 million. Yeah.
And I'd like to read this.
I can't hear, so you know.
Okay. And I'll sign you in. How's that? And you may proceed. Okay, thank you.
My first comment is, this is a public hearing, which means the public is here to speak for or against something that's going on. Problem is, the public has not been informed. There may have been something in the box of 3.1 million or some $1 million, but a public hearing is for citizens to be able to comment on an issue or a resolution of the board. And that, in order for the citizens to do that, they need to be informed of what the bond or what the resolution or the issue is in front of them. And to my knowledge, none of that has taken place at this point in time. The questions I have is, what's the purpose of the bond? I hear it's water, but we don't know what the water is. What's the amount of the bond? We now hear it's $3+ million. What are the terms of repayment? How many years and what's the interest? Which taxpayers are going to pay for this? This is the water district. Is this the whole town going to pay for this, or is this the water district that's going to pay for it? Who will do the work in the bond, and was it competitively bid? Did New York State Public Health require the work, and is the bond subject to permissive referendum? And what bank is holding the bond? Those are the types of things that I think the public needs to know to be able to come to a meeting such as this, that they can make a comment, an informed comment, to give you their feedback. Right now, I have not seen any of that. Maybe it's been around, but I don't know that any of these questions, other than something that was posted on the board, was the amount.
Okay. No, I appreciate the input, and I would hope, and unfortunately, I guess small government municipalities, that's the way we're required to report business at hand. Don't necessarily take out articles in the paper or things like that, but we are required to post legal notices in the format that's required by the comptroller's office and the bond counsel that we have for it. So I believe that was done. We have met all the requirements for legal posting. I can't remember if it was the last meeting or the meeting before that. This was on the agenda. And we did discuss the bond resolution, the parameters, the reasoning for that, discussion to adopt at that meeting to move forward to this point. You know, as you know, there's a sequence of events that have to take place for the legality of the bonds to go forward. So I believe, maybe I'm mistaken, but I believe we have met the legal requirements of public postings for that. Certainly it's not a perfect system that does that, because apparently you are as informed as anyone, you know, in Elizabethtown, reading legal notices and being out there. So if you're not, you know, aware of what the parameters are, either you missed the legal notice, what transpired at the meeting when we adopted this, and hopefully tonight, you know, we can give you that information.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Some of this,
Want to just go down through those one at a time?
yeah.
Are you gonna go through and answer these, or because I'm gonna ask, are you gonna go through and?
Not right now, I'm not.
Oh,
but
all right.
Once we get a little bit of time, would you like to comment on it?
Well, I'm really interested in what the terms of the repayment are.
Okay, I believe it's
You know,
30
like number 3
years.
there, and how many years and at what interest rate, that's really,
The interest rate will have to be at 0 interest, for 30 years, through EFC. And then you need a bond counsel to administrate the bundling of funding. I guess that's what you should say.
I don't.
It was mandated by DOH, the board members could, talk to you on that. We were required to have a redundant water source that almost equals the present one we have. It's never been agreed upon, so the well field that we have used as a redundant source has been deemed under the influence of surface water, for whatever reason. So we undertook the chore to follow the state Department of Health's lead and try to secure a secondary source, a redundant water source equal to the one we have up at Kilburn. DOH has been very, very proactive in that. I will certainly attribute our ability to gain the funding so rapidly to the DOH because they feel this is an important project. I suppose we could have said no.
Yeah, well, I don't
I'm
know.
not
if we
sure.
could've. I mean, I guess, can I?
Sure,
Jump
absolutely.
in a little bit too? I don't even know what the legal requirements and all that are, but I do know that it's been a monthly topic for 6 months at least at our meetings, too. So a lot of this information has been, in fact, that's where we're getting all of our information, with the exception of being a couple meetings that I've had the opportunity to sit in on. But, so, some of that information has been out there, and whether it's been communicated universally to the public or not. You could argue that even the presence of this meeting wasn't communicated that clearly either, but you guys found it, so, that's a good thing. Does it make sense though to go through the ones that we can hit now, because a lot of those are pretty easy to hit, aren't they?
These?
Yeah.
Oh,
Or
sure.
do you?
I was just,
It just sort of seems like it.
Yeah, it's just a practice, doing a long time, it's not a question and answer period. Once we're done, absolutely.
It's a comment.
I'll go down through this
Okay.
in a heartbeat, but basically a public hearing is for input, pros and cons, one way or the other.
But if you don't have the input, if you don't have the information, how can you comment on something you don't have the information on? I have got to believe that this information was not, and this is reasonable information for the public to have.
Sure.
And I got to believe this information was not in the public hearing, public notice.
That's correct.
It was in the first one.
Not these details.
It was in the first one. Not in the
No.
public hearing notice, but in the original notice for the consideration of the bond, it was.
No,
We had to
have
have
All
the
this
language.
information was in that,
Excuse me?
all this information was in that notice that you're talking about, that you're referencing?
Yeah, most of it. Yeah, as far as the debt liability, the time, this public hearing, what other requirements were on that. Yep. And we're just given a template. I don't make this stuff up. I get a template from Doug Goodfriend, who's one of the partners at Oric. And it, boom, 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 it's a line item. And all of these things must be done on the times that are allocated or everything's void. So we're pretty consistent trying to adhere to the mandated legal notices. We have to, or this would be void tonight.
From the Department of Health. This has been mandated pretty
Right,
rigorously
through
by the
Department of Health, but Doug.
I don't see,
Stuff.
my impression was we didn't really have we don't have a choice on this. How we solve it is one thing, but whether choosing not to solve it
Right.
could subject the town to some pretty big fines. And not to mention maybe even, kind of forbid some health issues as well. So,
Were there
But-
any alternative, low-cost, what methods that could have been used, or was this the best method, based on, you guys went through a lot of this research independently, actually?
Yeah.
I mean, my take on it was this is the best. There weren't a lot of options, and in fact, we still don't really know what the options are. A lot of it is to be determined once they start drilling. In a perfect world, they've done a all the geological data they have, and we get an artesian well with 150 gallons a minute on the first deal, but even that's not a guarantee.
What is the solution? I mean,
You want me to just?
Sure.
Only because
You know,
I've been talking with the Department of Health and Marlene Martin when she was, as driving then, she still is actually.
Yeah.
But Susan Kennedy also was originally the one that started all this, cause this has been, even to my surprise, this has been going on for a long time, and it's been one of those things that we've managed to somehow kind of
Push down the road.
push down the road, and it reached a point where I don't think we can do that anymore. And so that's where I started sitting in on some of the meetings and all those sort of things. But the problem is that we have a redundant source, as far as I understand it, and Noel, you can correct me if I got this wrong, but it has been deemed as being under the influence of groundwater, of surface water. And they're not allowing that as a redundant source anymore, which we need
And
as
that
a
was
requirement, New York State requirement.
And that was a question at time, that's one of the reasons why we kicked it down the road.
It was a question, yeah, we challenged it,
We
there were
fought
some
this
tests
for
that were
2 years.
done, and they found some proof of surface contaminants, nothing bad, but proof that that in fact, I think it was a little bit of.
Yeah, the
I
way
don't
it
even know
finally
what-
ended between Marlene Sue Kennedy just before she retired and us was, we will concede it's not under surface water contamination. And Noel, it doesn't matter. You don't have the volume that we require at that well field. That's how it all ended.
Right, that was a little
You know,
bit.
when I fought him, or we fought him and fought him and fought him because
Well, there were some questions as to what our requirement was. because
sufficiency
of
and the
leaks.
amount of money and things like
Yeah,
that.
and
We
how
had
much
a
was
well
leaks.
field there. Drove me crazy.
Is there state grants involved also?
This is a grant, yep. We were
What's it?
awarded 3 point something, 3.1.
But we're borrowing the money, it's not a grant. It's a bond, we're borrowing.
For the other, the other component.
6 million.
So it's a $6 million dollar.
No.
is there some way we can understand the scope? I mean, I hear you almost making it up, Noel. You tell me it's a grant, and then you're telling me there's a bond of 3 million? Somebody's gotta
I
have
misspoke
a
on that.
plan
Let's just
laid
say
out.
I read, we were awarded $3.1 million. We are required through EFC, through a bond council, to administrate that award.
Is that
That's what this is about.
is that $3 million need to be paid back?
Yes,
Then it's not a grant.
it's, it's a zero interest loan.
So
Well, that's different than a
Yeah.
grant.
Yeah,
That's big different than a grant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hence, $3.1 million, zero interest, 30 years, through EFC.
And that's the
And we're
maximum, it could come in
required
less.
through the bond council, yeah.
So it's $100,000 a year, how many users are there?
Right now, our Water 3 bond that we did originally is probably 80,000 a year that we get through water bills.
So
That's
how
what
many
pays for
total
the original
users are there
bond.
in the water district?
I have no idea, 300, 400, maybe, something like that. Cause we have, district users, we have out-of-district users, when you look at the totality of them. The out-of-district users cannot be charged debt. So it's the usage formula that we use that's been verified through the comptroller's office that makes it legal. There is no attributing cost to debt for outside water district users, it's all on use. Because the District 3 water users own the water. So that's how that works.
So this $100,000 a year debt is being paid by the people that live in the water district, and how many families is that? How many households is that? What does that come down to per person or per house?
Yeah, I don't know, at this point, I think we have, I just don't know.
How many
300,
people
400, something like that,
families are in the water district, 300 to
Again,
400?
something like that,
So it's-
300, 400.
So
It's $10,000 per person, per house,
no, it'd be
No.
$333.
$333.
Per the debt, yeah, at 300 users, if that's the baseline.
300,
So it's about $335, $4 a year.
So
to
that
pay
would
off
be,
the debt.
that would be tacked on to the,
The
debt
water
service
bill,
that we're paying now, is that what you're saying, another $300
on the water bill
on the water bill?
per person,
Per household.
per household.
So if you have 2
The
units.
debt would be incurred to the District Three, yep. Similarly to the original
So it would go up.
bond, yep.
How long is the other bond?
I think we were to 40, maybe. I think we are
a
Yeah,
year.
that's right.
until 2040, I think.
So it's
I
gonna
think
be
that's
counted
it.
in their own.
Yeah.
I mean, how much was borrowed the first time? Was it more than 3?
Yeah. Yeah.
And our debt service per unit is $150 a year, so this is gonna be more.
At those numbers.
No.
Well, divided by 300 households. That's $333.
Cause we don't know
I
what
mean,
the
it's
project
something
will
that-
be, there's so many variables right now.
I mean, I talked briefly today with Gordon,
Who?
Gordon, Costin,
Oh, okay, yep.
and we talked about this a little bit, and he thought perhaps that the wells that were taking on surface water could be repaired or fixed, so they,
That's off the table, yeah.
what?
If that's off the table, that's it.
So you have to drill another well to accommodate,
That's correct.
just in case.
Yeah, it's
Does that make sense or what?
It's all over the state.
Huh?
Yeah,
it's
they're all
just a-
looking for, you know,
including
redundancy in the water.
Three hundred and $30 million.
$70,000 storage tank.
They spent $25 million in time.
They want us to have almost double, as I remember,
Yeah.
what we need.
Twice. We need a
On
fully
a
redundant.
daily
I mean,
basis.
Didn't they drill where Doug Kelvin used to live, did they drill
That's the
like 2 or
primary
3 wells?
Mhm.
Or 1?
Well, there's two, there's a maintenance portion to that, there's two wells.
And it bypasses the old system.
That's our primary source currently. And that's what gets chlorinated and pumped to the water tank.
It gets chlorinated at
Yeah.
the bubble.
And that needs to be renovated also,
So
that's a
that's
part of
that is
the
part of this.
requirement through DOH
Full
is to
chlorination
renovate the
facility.
chlorination house.
Which is another thing that's obsolete, absolutely.
Yeah.
That we have.
Backup power, they want, you know, generator, things like that.
It is happening all over the state though, because I've got communities where there's much larger numbers than this, it's unbelievable, some of the. Ties took on $25 million to meet redundancy on the 2 wells, new wells. I mean, it's unbelievable,
Good, I'll hit you up for a loan.
if you want, sure.
Who's doing the work?
Schedule.
The firm's, Jack Dodson has been retained as the engineer, Claude Cormier with HydroSource was retained as the, geological engineer to find the new source. So I have been given 5 sites that now I'm in the process of meeting with those landowners, trying to secure access so that we can do preliminary testing on those sites to determine whether or not they're viable for consideration. So in the next 3 weeks, then we will hopefully, be able to, give our, hydrologists 2 or 3 possible sites.
So currently, only the engineering and the geotech is being done at this time,
Yeah,
hydrology.
and that's all that can be done until a source then has been.
And then it's going to bid. A $3 million project, you're
Once
questioning?
we get to that point, when you get into the infrastructure and all that, yeah, all has to be. And it'll be different, contracts, so there'll probably be a separate contract for the chlorination house. There'll be a separate contract for the well, there'll be a separate contract for the infrastructure to put it up. And then we're hoping that if we have a little more, depending on the luck, you know, if we're able to find a spot without spending a lot of money, securing the land and all that, we're hoping to have enough balance possibly to extend the infrastructure south on Route 9. That, service line that goes south to, don't you tell me. I was gonna say the Robolards. It goes to the Robolards, that's where it ends, and that's about a 3/4 inch line that runs all the way down through there after Partridge Lane. So that's one of the pieces that are really, in need of upgrading. As far as pressures, fire flows, there is none.
I mean, I know the hamlet, most of it is in the water district, but out of the hamlet, people are still on town water, they billed.
Yeah.
So anybody that has town water, they're billed.
That's
Right.
correct, yeah. And if they're
the
outside of the
water district's
district,
different than the
they're not
hamlet.
billed like you are, where I show your debt service, right? My property that's equals to yours, it's outside the district, I'll still pay the same amount of money, but as far as the, accounting bill that I receive, there's no, representation of debt. So I'm paying, because I'm outside of the district, higher rates for usage. But then that holds you harmless because you own the water, so you wouldn't sell it for less than what you pay for it. That's why we set it up like that.
So you have a water bill,
Yes, everybody has a water bill.
I mean, up Roscoe Road.
Yes, yep. Does it reflect that?
So that I understand what you just said. So someone such as yourself receives a water bill at a higher rate because you do
An
not have
equal
de-
rate, yeah.
an equal rate,
Without reflecting debt,
but you do not have debt service on your bill.
that's correct.
It's just not broken.
Yeah. So I pay a higher dollar per gallon. so to
Okay,
speak,
that's what I meant.
So that when I'm done, the minimum charge for an outside the water district equals what the minimum charge is inside the water district. But without the $150 debt application.
So say if it's $333, give or take. And if you charge me for 4 units, then it's gonna be $1,300 plus, plus what I pay now. You're gonna charge me per
Because of the
unit,
debt service, yeah.
maybe I'll start tearing down buildings.
Let's load your
I mean,
budget.
where do we get this money?
What?
Where do we get this money to live in Elizabethtown?
Are you searching grants?
What?
Are you searching grants to help with this project or outside funding sources from the state? Is there anything else available to help with the project?
We're hoping, but no guarantees. There's a lot of competition for it, but absolutely.
Do we have applications out?
It's the round that will start again here in the spring. We will be involved. More of those.
Is poverty figured into, okay,
Another question about the debt service. You live outside the hamlet, but you get water from within the town. And you pay for the water, but you don't pay for that extra fee that we all pay to have the service. Why is that?
Okay. For your house, $235, give or take, $237, something like that. That's what your cost is if you don't exceed your minimal allocated use. Does that sound familiar?
It's,
1 year for you, your house,
right,
one debt
it's about,
service,
yes,
about
yeah,
$235.
$88, $44, whatever it is. Plus
Me
the-
outside the district,
Mhm.
without any representation of a debt service,
Mhm.
my bill minimally, without going over the allocated usage, equals yours. It's just I am charged a higher dollar per gallon
Yeah,
outside
So
the
it's
it's
district.
confusing. So if he's paying for water at a much higher rate,
A higher rate.
and then,
Yeah.
and the difference is they just don't break out, like you're paying maybe a half the rate that he is paying, and then the rest of it's broken out as a debt service.
Debt.
Okay, so it's still, so then your rate will go up then
Why
once
is
this
that?
project gets put into place.
Everybody's, possibly, it just depends on how it all breaks out. Yes, the dissemination of costs has to be equal outside the district, so that the inside district, you all own systems in the water. So, that's what we always say, is you're not gonna sell your water for less than what it costs you. So that's how we sort of manufactured that table to be able to do that. So we got the purpose, about the amount, and I'll go in and get the paper here in a minute. Terms 30, taxpayers, you know. The work will all be bid out by law. Public health is the one driving the train. It probably is subject to permissive referendum, almost everything is. In which bank? I don't know. None of my other bonds are with a bank that I can think of. You can talk fast. Go ahead, Bob.
What's the time frame regarding this water project? This year?
Now. That's what it is. Yeah, we've had meetings, probably due for a meeting next week. Cause we're trying to keep this on a fast track with Department of Health, with the engineers, with community resources over at the county and all that.
Potentially fines involved too.
Yes.
Some point.
Yes.
I mean, they've been waiving fines.
So this,
Basically,
is it this Department of Health that mandates this?
Yeah.
Maybe they can help Elizabethtown.
They just did, they're the ones who are
they're
really
the
driving
ones.
this.
They what?
They're the ones that have been trying to seek the funding. This is the first I've heard that there wasn't more funding available besides the low interest loan, so.
The three.
There certainly was the impression that there was gonna be
I thought it was
some pretty heavy
substantial
assistance.
grants.
Yeah.
And we're hoping there will be.
Good.
So,
But this is the first.
I mean, when you talk to
necessary
them, they're
step.
like, this was the impression I got, maybe you can correct me on that, but it was more of a don't worry, we'll find the money kind of thing. We know we're mandating it, but, you know.
Jeff, when you talk,
there's money
you
on
say them, who's them?
it. The Department of Health.
Cause our original, I'm trying to remember, it seemed like we were,
We
we
scored
had
really high.
2 million in grant and 2.5 million through an EFC zero interest loan. That was the original water project. This project is starting off that way, where we will have 3.1 zero interest, 30 years through EFC, and then we're hoping we'd be able to somehow leverage another $1 million.
Is it a case where they're just trying, obviously it has to go forward, and they just wanna make sure that we're on the hook for the maximum amount, and then that gets backfilled with grants? Is that what
Wouldn't it
they're
be better
going
to
for?
leverage it the other
That was,
way?
that sounds more, yeah, funny,
Wouldn't
but,
it be better to leverage it the other way and
Yeah,
and
see, we
pass
don't
a
need
bond
that
for
30
$1.5 million
years.
and say, well, that's the best we can do, like the sewer problem.
right,
The
this is
governor's
all we
gonna
got.
get another $1 million to make the sewer work, and why
Yeah.
don't we just do it that way?
Yeah.
Give them $1.5
I
million.
have to admit, it's certainly committed.
I mean, if the EFC is willing to put money in on grants, how do you guarantee the grants if you go ahead with the bond? Why do they have to give it to this municipality?
We did go through this scoring and scored very well based on the average income, median income for the town, in particular the new stretch south of town, because that was one where we could produce another need because of fire safety. You know, they were all pretty excited that we were gonna score really high and get significant funding, so I don't know how it went from that a month ago to where we are now, but I hope that it's just, this is,
Right, this is
The way
the
the game is
beginning,
played.
and that we would get the other, grant funding.
Yeah.
The governor just sat down, actually.
Yeah.
So then we'll wait and see, cause I think there was 20 billion. Yes.
so I'm gonna try to answer that question myself, just figure out.
Yeah, cause my question would be too, if we're committed to a bond, and then we got the grant money,
It would be used to pay off the bond.
will it?
I would
Will it
presume
be
that-
used to,
I
I
would
mean,
imagine.
how do we, make sure that that is kind of forgiven or?
Well, actually, the way the other one worked, no, the grant was used for other work that needed to be done.
Right,
So
but
the
this
grant-
is not written that
The
way.
bond was always, gonna be a cost.
It
Well,
just,
the original.
No, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, unless I'm not understanding, we're talking about a bond, and a 30-year bond that we're gonna commit to, but possibly there will be grant money that can cover that, so wouldn't that go toward the bond, paying off the bond, I'm saying, forgetting, or how, whatever the word is. Am I not making any sense?
If there was no other above cost, yes, that's how it would work, because you would have a finite, debt for the infrastructure that you just put in, say it's 2.8, but it'll be more than that. And then you got a grant for 2, and you had no other cost above it, then yes, you could apply that grant.
But it has
to
to go
your
into
debt
that
funding.
project, right? I mean, the grants are,
It would go
they
into that
stipulate.
project, but generally the projects are going to be more than that, so when you get a grant, like in the last project, 2 million grant, 2.5 million EFC 33 years, no interest. Almost all capital projects are set up that way. Harry, I'm sorry.
It just seems like the horse is before the cart here.
A little bit.
And you alluded to 3.1 million you're gonna borrow, and then when Greg said something about, well, a grant, you said, well, yeah, there's another 3 million. So it sounds like this is a $6 million project.
I misspoke on that, and I was
Okay.
whatever it was, I was responding the difference, grant, whatever that other term was, you This is grant.
Or the
My
total
question is the
three
budget-
one.
The 3.1 million, is that really the budget number, high-end budget
It's
number? the
high end,
engineers that
but
came
my,
up with?
my impression is it's a high-end budget number that include, you know, I think the uncertainty is if we don't hit the amount of water that we need on that first drilling. They're pretty optimistic when you talk to them, because we have such a good artesian source on the edge of town.
I made that number up.
So, you know, and I've heard, sitting in on the meetings, I've heard these guys talk about it, most of them are pretty optimistic, but they also hedge their bets and say, look, there's a chance we might need a second well, for instance, in order to get to the volume that we need to be considered as a redundant source. So most of the numbers that they've thrown around were pretty conservative based on that. And that's inclusive of the chlorination house, a new building, completely new building with all the chlorination facilities inside it,
Tying in the new well.
and then tying it all in, yeah.
So it will be
Tied
located
in the
near
old
where
one,
it is originally now.
No, well, I don't know.
The chlorination.
I think a lot depends on where the well ends up too. I mean, they're gonna, you know, they have 10 sites maybe. You know, their scale, they're rating each of the sites, it's pretty interesting data. I mean, it's very thorough, that's for sure. But at some point, this is, we believe, our best chances to get
So
water.
it all gets pumped into one central well,
Well, we have the storage.
tank,
Yes.
and then chlorinated, so wherever those
No, it's
other,
chlorinated before it goes into the storage tank.
so wherever those other locations are, it would have to then be pumped to the storage unit.
Yes.
So there's no new storage unit.
No, the tank itself was part of that original project, right?
Yeah, that's pretty.
That's a big tank,
Yeah,
that would be,
it's
big.
that would be expensive.
I can imagine.
That's a list. I don't know if I've given you those. Those are the, in sequence of most desirable, which is less. Further comments on the bond before I go?
This is my last comment.
You can have two.
I know you guys are under the gun because it's mandated, not much to do, but I don't think anybody needs to be reminded that we pay school tax, property tax, water tax, plus the debt service, now this, and then the sewer. I mean, when does it stop? I mean,
Never.
how many people are on a fixed income here in town that can afford this? So I would say if you can secure some grant money to do what's needed, then
We'd all be better off.
has,
Yeah.
right, to save the taxpayers.
On it.
Instead of putting a roof on, I'd have to pay this service.
Medicine, food, oil, it's the same.
Good
It's the
point,
same
well taken,
story.
I understand,
Thank
you know, what you're saying, we're trying to be as cost efficient, I believe, as we can be, as our budget, I think, represents, the topics for twenty.
It sounds
It really did. Further questions or comments on the bond? Harry, I'll give you a copy of that once we get it. So we will call the public hearing on the bond consideration closed.